Hello, everyone. It's me, Queenie Brown. I'm so excited that you're joining me today. Welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I am thrilled that you decided to have lunch with me and start on this new journey. There's so much that we're going to talk about, and I'm just thrilled. So let's go ahead and get started. Um, I am the author of the Self Love Lessons. I also am the founder of Wisdom Sister Circles and supernaturalchildbirth.com. And I have had some pretty darn amazing experiences in my life. I've had some wonderful friendships, wonderful relationships, wonderful opportunities, and I've also had some interesting challenges throughout my life. And one of the things that I've learned is that we each have dreams. We each have things that we want to accomplish in our lives. We've things that we've aspired to all of our lives. And for some reason or another, we've got obstacles that are in our lives that are preventing us from actually reaching and living out those dreams. And so while I've had some of these great experiences, those challenges have actually been interesting. As I've grown through them, I've learned some, excuse me, some really powerful lessons. And I've taken notes of those lessons, and I've just decided that I'm going to use my life as a playground. And I'm going to share my stories. I'm going to put my business in the streets. I'm going to share the joys. I'm going to share the pains. I'm going to share the good, the bad, and some of the ugly, um, in hopes that I help you to see yourself maybe in some of my stories, and perhaps you can see how you might be able to overcome an obstacle that you might have seen in my story or in the stories of others. Over time, we're going to invite other women and men onto the show so that they can share their stories, and you're able to hear some of their triumphs and the things that they were able to overcome. And the goal of all of this is so that each and every one of us completely obliterates every single obstacle, hurdle, challenge that's preventing us from living in the fullness of the promises that God has made for us. Because it's already done. We already know that what God has promised us is a finished work. But why aren't we living it? What's in the way? What's the issue? It's not God. He's already done it. I'm not saying I'm blaming us, and I'm not saying that we need to be fixed. But in our lives, we've all dealt with certain circumstances that have created wounds. And those wounds look like shame or blame or unworthiness or inadequacy or fear. Or I mean, there's just a whole lot of them. And they're all obstacles that are not insurmountable. We can overcome them. But we've got to learn how. We've got to get the tool set so that we learn how to change our mindset. And I want to offer you throughout this Wisdom Wednesdays journey just another perspective, just something to consider, a new way of looking at something. Perhaps you've been looking at things through your wounds, and I can show you through my story or through the stories of others, just a different way. So that is where we're going to go with Wisdom Wednesdays, and it's going to be powerful. I expect for each of us, as we grow through this, to become powerhouses, to become invincible, the way that God created us. God is invincible, and we're created in His image, just like Him, and He loves us, and so we are designed to thrive. And I want to see each of us standing in the fullness of our strengths, standing in the fullness of our gifts, standing fully and completely expressed, and walking in the fullness of love. So, having said that, I want to take you on a little journey. Do you remember back, way, way, way back, to the day you were conceived? I know you remember. You remember that day. No, you don't. None of us do. The day that you were conceived, the day that you actually penetrated the egg in your mother's womb. I want to take you back to that day. So now just imagine you are having the most deep, pleasant, restful sleep that you have ever imagined experiencing. and that's all you've ever known, just this peaceful, deep, restful sleep. That is your everyday reality. And then one day, out of the blue, with no warning at all, the gun goes off. Boom. And they're off. And you're awakened, startled, and all you know to do is run for your life. You're running and you're moving. And not only are you running, but you have all of these other people that are running this race with you. Now, let me just give you a little perspective. There are, in one, and I'm going to try to be delicate, in one emission of sperm, you would have anywhere from 180 million to 400 million sperm cells. So just if you look at that on the people scale, there are 314 million people in the United States of America that's citizens. So they may not actually be living here in the States, but citizens of the United States, 314 million. So let's just take that number and look at the fact that you, amongst every person that lives in the U.S., are in this race. And you are racing literally for your life. And now imagine all the terrain that you're going to have to overcome just in the United States. You've got mountains, you've got valleys, you've got rivers, you've got lakes that are tremendously great. You've got the elements. You've got to deal with the heat in the desert. If you've ever been through the desert, oh my God, that heat is unbelievable. If you've ever been to the top of a mountain, the thinness of the air, the cold, the snow. Imagine having to overcome all of this, and then the sleet. And as a person living in Atlanta, sleet ain't no joke. I will attest to what it looks like when you are not prepared to overcome sleet. Craziness. Anyway, I digress. The point that I'm making is you were in this race for your life amongst all these people, and you were racing over the most unbelievable obstacles that you had to overcome. And then when it all is said and done, you made it to the egg first. You, the one looking at me, you made it to the egg first. And you penetrated that egg. And you fertilized that egg. And you began the process of your life that day. So you won the lottery, literally. And the odds were so stacked against you. Everything was stacked against you, but you did it. And I have a question for you. Why did you come all this way? Why did you come all this way? You had a purpose. There was a reason for you running as hard as you did, for you fighting through everything that you did, for you being the one that won. Now, you know, I recently had a baby, and I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about my body. And someone described the female reproductive system to me as hostile. Think about that. The female reproductive system is designed to completely weed out the weak. If you, as a sperm cell, if you are not swimming fast enough, or if you are not, if your tail isn't wiggling right, or if there's anything imperfect about you, you won't win, because there's too many that have everything in place in order to succeed. You're racing against, it's like, what's the word? Only the strong survive. That's the environment that God created in our bodies, so that He would ensure that we would not only make it through the process of fertilizing that egg, but when you think about the fact that once you do that, now this baby has to develop all of the systems in order to sustain life. It has to have the ability to breathe, the ability to take in air so that your body can feed your muscles, and your muscles can grow, and you need to be able to take in food so that you can absorb the nutrients, and the body knows to separate the nutrients from the waste and eliminate the waste and use the nutrients building blocks in order to build the brain and to build the heart, and all that stuff has to come together like clockwork. And it does for the most part. But even if you make it there, there are those that don't make it through that birth process. I have had 2 miscarriages. I know what it's like when the baby's developing and everything, I'm pregnant. The stick is blue. There's a plus sign. It says pregnant across there. But the baby wasn't viable. It didn't make it through the birth process. So I'm sharing all of this with you to see how when you showed up here, when you made it through the birth canal into the arms of your parents, you won the lotto and you were the strongest of all. And you got to know that that's purposeful. There was an intended value placed upon you that had nothing to do with you. It had absolutely nothing to do with you. And so also, when you got here, you had a natural set of talents, a natural set of abilities. You had gifts, skills. I call them your tags. Talents, abilities, gifts, skills. You had an understanding of your oneness and connection with God, whether you realize it or not. If you think about it, kids, they have no fears. They don't have any limitations. They are fully connected with their God likeness, and they unlearn that through the process of development. So you came here, you watching me, listening to me. You showed up here with everything you needed in order to thrive. Now, once you got here, you ended up in a family. Now, every single one of us were born into families with people who were imperfect. And a lot of them were wounded, and a lot of them were equipped. Some of them were not equipped to fully give you everything you needed in order to really thrive in life. And I call that wounding each other. I don't want to blame anybody, because there's no perfect parent. There's no perfect person that has gone through this life and never hurt anybody, never affected anybody's life in a way other than Jesus Christ. Everyone has been wounded and has wounded others. So we're all in this together. There's nobody perfect. And I say that because I don't want anybody to think that that's our goal. Perfection is not our goal. We are not trying to fix ourselves. We are trying to align ourselves in our thought process so that we can receive the fullness of the healing that's already been made available to us. So anyway, so here it is, you against the USA. You made it, you won, you got here, and you're placed in this family. And you've made it now to adulthood with however many wounds and scars you may have or may not have. You made it here. And there was a reason for that. So I shared all of that to say that that's just one side of the story. On the other side of the story, you got to think about who created the system in the first place. Who created the environment for you to be able to run the race, let alone win the race? And then be able to fully develop into this person that is listening to me right now on this hangout. Who created that system? Well, we all know within us, regardless of what religion, ignoring any dogma, ignoring any tradition, forgetting about all of that stuff, because really fully represents the fullness of the creator of it all. I'm talking about the knowing, the all-loving, the giving, the all-sharing, the complete, just is the master creator. He's the master scientist. He's the master physicist, the master physician, the master everything. He set up a system where not only could you show up into this life fully equipped, regardless if you have things that are not perfect or normal about you. You made it here and you're listening to me. So he set up a system where not only could you show up and then be here on this hangout, but that it's designed, he has designed each of us to create just like him, to follow in the Father's business. It's the family business. The thing that I think we need to understand about ourselves is those wounds that we grew through have created stumbling blocks. They've created obstacles that we'll continue to see showing up in our lives over and over again until we are willing and open enough to say, you know what, it's time for me to look in the mirror, and it's time for me to really face who I am, who I see myself to be in the natural, and then reconcile that with the truth about who I am based on who God created me to be, and marry the two, and let the obstacles fall away so that you can fully stand in the image and likeness that you were created to be. So that's what this journey is going to be about. It's about really owning our identity, really knowing and stepping forward in the fullness of that, and then utilizing the gifts and the talents and the abilities that we've been given to fully express them in whatever calling and assignment we've been given. So now that I've shared all that, I'll give you a little bit of insight into my story. I am originally from Los Angeles. I have all my family's, well, not all my family, but the majority of my close family unit still lives in Los Angeles, and I miss y'all. I hope you're watching. Anyway, and I now live in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been here for about 20 years. My husband and I have been married for 16 years, and last year, at the age of 43, after having been told I was never going to be able to have a baby, I gave birth to the most amazing, the sweetest, the most funny, loving, joyful little bundle of love anybody could imagine. She is just oh, my heart. And I'll introduce you to her and my life as we go through, as we progress through the weeks. Anyway, so my story was, as a young girl, I had it all. I thought, I was very outgoing. I was very social. I had a lot of social circles. I was very involved. I just wanted to be out there doing all the stuff. Whatever it was that could be done, I wanted to do it. And I came up in a family with a lot of women. I have 5 sisters and a brother, and grew up primarily living with 3 of my sisters and then 1 sister, because the rest were older. And I learned through those relationships how to build friendships. And I also learned really early on that me showing up fully, being me in all of my self-expression, that made people uncomfortable. It made them so uncomfortable that it would cause them to want to hurt me. And so I learned very early on to stuff myself and to put me in this little bitty box so that everybody around me was comfortable, and that they wouldn't be drawn to try to hurt me or invalidate me or belittle me or find fault in me and all of that. Now at the same time, I have such a soft heart, and I think God made me sensitive the way that I am, because of my calling, because I needed to be able to have compassion for the pain that others are growing through, in order for us to be able to grow through it. Somebody has to be able to say, you know what, I get it, and I hate that happened to you, and gosh, you should have been loved, and somebody should have hugged you and not hurt you, and you need that soft space to fall when you're growing. But back then, I didn't understand it. To me, I was just a big old crybaby, and my sisters would tell me all the time, "Oh Lord, here she goes. She's just emotional, or she's, it's just drama." But I saw that as a weakness back then. So I found myself in relationships, as I said before, that would make me just shut parts of myself down, and and over time, that became a very unhealthy pattern. Now, also, I was in California, and one day Mom and I were in the grocery store, and this gentleman walked up to Mom, and he said, um, "Excuse me, ma'am. I own a modeling agency, and I would really like to train your daughter and put her on the runway. I think she'd be great, and I really want to do this." And so Mom said yes. And at the age of 11 years old, I started modeling. And I became really, really good at it and very active in the community. And I was doing shows all over LA and all in Hollywood. And it was lots of fun. And I grew to where I ended up coordinating a lot of those shows and putting on things. I remember, you guys, I'm going to date myself, but I did a lot of work for USA for Africa back then. And, lots and lots of shows. So, and that opened me up to a wide range of people in different walks of life and just a whole lot of different exposure. And that was the only time in my life where I really felt like I can be big. I can be me. I can be, I can get on that runway and I can rock it. And I felt like I could do that. But in my real life, like when I was on the stage, I could be me. But in my real life, I had to belittle me. So then, life happened, and I got married, and we kind of were two broken people breaking each other. And I know you know what that's like. And over the years, I stuffed so much of my feelings, and I kept keeping myself in this box that my body started to react. And over time, I started having all kinds of crazy symptoms. I had headaches and insomnia and panic attacks, and the bottoms of my feet would burn, like it felt like someone was taking a match and just running it up over the bottom of my feet. Even in my sleep, I would have to hang my feet off the bed because it felt like they were burning all the time. And I remember my neck and shoulders got really tight, and they were up so high I couldn't turn to the left or right to drive, and I ended up being on disability. Like all the skin on my lips came off. It was not at all attractive. But it was literally no skin on my lips, and then they would itch, and I would scratch them, and then they would blister, and then it would crack, and pus would come out, and I'm telling you, it wasn't cute. So, I kept going to the doctors and trying to figure out what is wrong with me. I was at the time about 29 years old, 28, and they kept saying it's stress, you have to deal with your stress. And all I could think of is, what the heck am I stressed about? I'm in a relationship, we're happy. I'm living my dreams. I'm making great money. I'm living in a beautiful home, and I'm happy. I couldn't imagine what could possibly be wrong. And it wasn't until my jaw started tightening up. And one day I went and bought a burger, and I tried to open my mouth, and this is all I could do. I said, "Oh Lord, no, we gotta go fix this." And once you couldn't buy the burger, that's where we draw the line. So I went to the dentist, and here it is. He's telling me, "You're clenching your jaws so tightly that you've literally locked your jaws in place. And it's stress. Your body is trying to release it. It's trying all these different ways to release it, and you're not paying attention. And it's not until you start paying attention that you're going to really heal." So I finally just decided, you know what, let me go talk to somebody. Clearly, I got a problem, and I'm the problem if I don't fix it. So I started seeing a counselor, and just telling her my story and talking about, the deeper stuff, that the feeling stuff, the hurt and the pains and the shame and all of the stuff that had embedded itself within me as I kept putting myself in this box, and I kept stuffing emotions, and I kept, dealing with unhealthy relationships and so forth. So I ended up being in a relationship with her for almost 2 years. It was just about to be 2 years. And at that time, I came to the realization, I remembered that I had been molested when I was 9 years old. And it was never a conscious memory. It was always there. but I had never spoken it out loud. I never felt like I had the freedom to, nor the presence of mind to. Never really understood how that all worked. But anyway, they talk about repressed memories and so forth, and I always knew it was there. But anyway, so she said to me, how could you wait 2 years almost, and you're just now telling me this after we've been going through all this stuff, and now you're just opening up about it. And I told her, it didn't even occur to me to talk about that. So anyway, I continued on, and a few weeks later, I had the most amazing experience of my life. Now, let me just kind of give you a little bit of background about me with religion. I loathe religion. I love God, but I loathe religion. And growing up, Mom took us to church from time to time. We would go for a while. Like there were a few years where we were going consistently to a church. But at the same time, I would go and visit other friends' churches, and I went to the Baptist churches, and I went to Methodist churches and Catholic churches and um, religious science churches. They called them Science of the Mind back then. Um, I went to the mosque. I've been to Jehovah's Witness, Kingdom Halls. I've been to Seventh Day Adventist. I've been to all of these different environments as I had gone to these environments as a little girl. And I had questions because it did not make sense to me how so many different people from so many different walks of life could worship God, the one God, in so many different ways. How does that make sense? And and then I started to understand how I started to notice, like, some of my friends couldn't wear pants to church, and some of my friends couldn't play in sports, and some of them couldn't. Um, there was just all these rules, and just for this particular church, and then this church, you got to say you got to chant all this stuff all the time, and you got to hold some beads, and you got to do all of this stuff. It just, what do you do with all that when you see so many different ways that people are worshiping? So growing up, that really gave me a challenge because I knew and loved God. And my mother, she would always talk about prayer, and she would pray. And I remember just a vivid memory of mine, of my mother, is every single night, even to this day, she gets on her knees before she goes to bed and she prays every night without fail. And so she showed me what having a relationship with God was about, but it wasn't about doctrine and tradition and a list of do's and don'ts. So I feel grateful for that. But at one point, when I went to college, and that's when your mind opens up and you start seeing things from a different perspective. Once I got to college, I got into the Black Student Union. Black power. At least it was back then. And I started learning these things about the Bible, and the authorship of the Bible. That the fact that there was a deciding factor that came together. And I'll just tell you the story in case you don't know. In 325 AD, after Christ had died, all these Christians were being liberated because, Christ said that you're going to do greater works than I did. And he said that you are empowered. And now that I'm gone, I'm leaving the Holy Spirit in you. So you do you, basically, is what Christ said. Now, that word was spreading. They were writing about it. All the disciples were still sharing the message of Christ. And, they all knew what had happened. Everyone knew what had happened. The sky doggone split open when Christ was on that cross. And, it showed in the stars. And I'll tell you about that one day, what happened actually in the skies. Astronomically, you can see what happened when Christ was on the cross. And we can date and time exactly what time that happened because it's written in the stars. Amazing stuff. But anyway, so So all these people were being liberated. And so imagine, now I'm free. I'm telling my girls and I'm telling my husband and I'm telling my kids, y'all are free. You don't have to listen to you don't have to listen to the emperor. You don't have to listen to these people tell you all this stuff. So there was like an uproar happening in during that time. And the emperors were having a challenge because now these people were not following their rules and laws. And they were concerned that they were going to lose the power. So what they did, what Constantine did at that time was he decided to bring together all of these people who were renowned for their wisdom. He brought together, just folks from that time that everybody considered to be those wise ones. I'll just say that instead of trying to list all those types of people. But anyway, so what they did was they looked at every book that was a story about what had happened, and they decided which books were going to be included in the actual canonized Bible, the Bible that we read today. And so they said, I want Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in here, but get the book of Judas out of here, get the book of Mary out of here, get all this stuff. We don't need all of that. And the intent was take all the stuff that's going to make them see how much power they have out. I don't need all that. They need to stay in control. Give them these commands. They need to stick by these rules and live in this world. And we need to make them think that in order for them to receive love from God, they've got to behave. And in order for them to go to heaven, they've got to behave and they've got to submit to the emperor, basically. And that's gonna be what qualifies you for God's love and for God's forgiveness. And you got to forgive somebody else, or you got to do all this stuff, all these rules they left in there and took all the power out. So it worked. It worked, and that was what started the Catholic religion. And that's where do I go from here? The point that I was trying to make in sharing that was that the power that they stripped out of the Bible, the great thing about our God and the amazing thing about our God is even though they thought they took out everything that would show us the strength and the power and the wisdom and the infallibility of the God that's within us, they thought they could take it all out. But even with what they left in there, there's still enough, and the heartbeat of God is still in it enough where there's no way you can read it with an understanding of the heart of God and not be walking in that power and not walk in the fullness of that strength. So doesn't mean that what's in the Bible is invalid. It's a valuable tool, and it's a love letter. It's God's words of life and love to us, and it's the stories of what he said and did in the lives of men and how they were able to overcome things, and just it's the most amazing love story you could ever read, and know that it's living and breathing and it's growing, and every time you read it you'll find something new out of it that will reveal something about you that you may never have known. So I love the Bible, and I trust it, and I trust God in me to help me understand it, because for a long time I didn't, and I couldn't understand why you could say love your neighbor, but in this other sentence you're telling me to hate my husband, and there was just so much contradiction. And I understood that, or I learned that when I was in college, that there's all this contradiction. Why does this not make sense? How come every time I open it I don't get it, and I'm supposed to get it? If God wrote it to me and it's a love letter, why don't I get it? So I decided to start studying, and I ended up meeting with this couple they were like scholars, and they showed me that when you're reading the Bible, it's important to not just read word for word and literally take how I see it and put my perspective on it and use that as the gospel. They showed me that it's important to understand who is talking when you're reading it, who's speaking, who are they speaking to, and what was the circumstances to why they're saying what they're saying. And then what was going on around the time, because there may have been something going on that was the reason for them saying what they're saying, and that it doesn't apply to everything. So you got to know the context of what you're reading in order to really be able to get the truth about what you're reading. So they taught me that, and then they gave me some assignments. Like he said, why don't you study the history of some of the holidays that you celebrate? So I said, okay, well, let me do some research on Christmas. I'm not in a church. Oh, let me preface that by saying, once I got out of high school, because of all of the stuff that I had seen in church, and I saw how people were being manipulated to behave a certain way, and I felt like all preachers wanted was my money. I wasn't going to give them a dime. There was one time I had gone into a church, and the preacher said that they had a budget. I can't remember the number, but let me just say there was a budget of $5,000 that they needed, and so that he had them lock the doors, and we were going to be in there praying until $5,000 came out of everybody's pocket. That was the last time I went to a church for a long, 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 long time. I trusted God. I trusted the Bible. I didn't trust preachers. So I had been away from the church for so long, and that's when I was introduced to this couple, and they started to show me how to dig through the Bible. And I would tell them, I hear what you're saying to me, but I need you to show me how I can find out for myself. I don't want to know what you know. I want to know how I can know what you know. I want to know how to dig through and study it myself. I want to, what tools are you using, what resources, or whose books are you reading, so that I can get a full picture of an understanding, and know within my knower what it is that I know. And so I started studying on my own. I was just digging and digging and digging. And I learned some interesting things about a lot of our holidays. Some of them quite disturbing, but I even at the time I got so scared. I told my husband I don't want no Christmas tree in my house, because there's a scripture that God says, don't erect a tree in your house and hang balls on it. And so I was just like, oh, I can't make God mad with this. I just thought about that. I forgot about that. But anyway, so I'm over that. I learned I'm free from that anyway. So when I was in therapy, and at the end of the time that I had been there, I had an experience that kind of threw me. I remember, keep in mind, here it is, I'm dealing with all this stuff in my body, everything is shutting down. I got to a point where I could barely take a flight of stairs. I mean, I'm walking up one step and then I have to stop and then breathe and then take another couple of steps and then stop and breathe. And then by the time I get up to the top of the stairs, I'm leaning on the stair rail, and I'm just breathing, and I couldn't wear high heels anymore. I had these hospital shoes that I have been wearing probably for over 10 years. No high heels for over 10 years. Let me just say that loud. That hurt my heart, and it's still, anyway, I'm healed in the name of Jesus. So at the time, I was on disability because I couldn't drive, and I couldn't do anything. All I could do was read, and I started reading about loving myself, and reading about pampering me, and reading about, taking time to just be still and grow me. And I didn't know that this was possible, but all of a sudden, one day, my husband was in the shower, and I walked in the bedroom, and it was just the two of us in the house and our dog. And the TV wasn't on. It was early in the morning. And I walked in the bedroom, and I heard, "Kelly, can you hear me?" And I looked, and I thought, is that Charles? Is he saying something to me? And he's in the shower. So it was too vivid, and it was too loud, and it was too clear. And I heard it again. "I know you can hear me. Kelly, can you hear me?" And I said, "Oh my God, it's official. I have lost my mind." I snapped just now. I'm nuts. And I fell onto the bed, and I laughed and I laughed and I laughed. And all I could think about was, I really just lost my mind. There's somebody talking to me now. Oh my gosh. And so I went, when I saw my counselor the next time, I told her, I said, this is going to sound strange, but somebody's talking to me. And they won't shut up. I said, he just keeps talking and talking. And I can't get him to stop. And her eyes got big. And I told her, I said, I'm thinking what you're thinking. So anyway, she said, oh, okay. And so, I left it alone. Well, that was in October of the year 2000. And in November of 2000, at Thanksgiving time, my husband said to me, I don't want to talk all Thanksgiving weekend. Can we have a silent weekend? A silent weekend? What do you mean a silent weekend? He said, I just don't want to talk. I just kind of wanted just to be, silent. And we weren't mad at each other. We weren't having any issues. There was no, reason for him to say that, other than if he just wanted to watch football and didn't want to be bothered. But anyway, so I was offended. I mean, what am I supposed to do? My family's in California. I'm just supposed to cook in here all day while you watch your games, and I'm not supposed to talk to anybody. I don't have any family here, so I'm going into the black woman role. And I just, are you serious? Have you lost it? And so I told him, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write every single thought, every joke, every story, everything that comes to my mind. I'm going to write it down. And on Monday, I'm letting you have it. I'm talking all day Monday. I'm just going to warn you. And he said, okay. And so that's what happened. Now, here I am. I got to give you a picture of the full look of me going through all the pain that I was dealing with. I had an ice pack around my shoulders because my neck and shoulders were so tight and my back was so tight. I had a brace around my waist. I had my hospital shoes on, and I'm moving around in the kitchen trying to cook Thanksgiving dinner. But I had my notepad, I had my pen, and I was ready. And so ideas started coming to me, and I just jotted them down. And then I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I wrote that down. And then I went and made some mashed potatoes. And then I came, another idea came. So I'm writing, and then next thing you know, I'm into the book, and I'm just writing, and stuff is just flowing, and the ideas are coming, and oh, this is, and then it got to a point to where it wasn't even conscious. I wasn't conscious of what was actually ending up in the book. I was just kind of free flowing and letting whatever hit the pen end up on the paper. And I wrote all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday, and by early evening on Saturday evening, I started to read what I had written, and the tears started to pour down my face. I mean to tell you, I could not believe what was on that pad. I started crying, and then I started wailing, and then I started rocking, and now I'm on the floor, and I'm rocking, and I'm wailing, and I'm crying, and he runs out, and he's like, "What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you?" And I'm babbling, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it, oh my God," just thinking about it right now. Anyway, I realized that it was not me writing, but it was God writing through me, to me. And he was showing me all that he had placed within me. He showed me the gifts that he had given me, and how the experiences that I had had in my life were equipping me and providing me with lessons that I would not only be able to apply to my own life, but that I would be able to teach other people, and that they would be able to learn and be healed by my story. And he told me a lot of stuff, but he showed it to me, and that was the powerful part. He said, remember when this happened? This is when I gave you this gift, and this is when I made it stronger by when I connected you with this person, and then this person helped build it in another way, and so now this gift can be used like this. And so this is how he wrote to me, and it freaked me out. It did, because when I heard that voice back in October, I didn't even know it was God. I didn't know God could talk to you. I didn't know that. Never heard of anybody in my lifetime that I believed that had heard from God. And now not only had I heard from him, but I have, like, he just read me he read my mail. And he showed me what I was going to do, and that I was going to write books and share all of this stuff. And and the weight of responsibility in that moment just kind of fell on me, because all I could think about was, how am I going to do this? Because I'm in so much pain. And I can't even take a flight of stairs. How am I gonna empower and encourage anybody? How, I couldn't even see past I couldn't even see past my own pain to be able to get to the healing. Excuse me, let alone be able to help somebody else. I couldn't even imagine it. So I was just bawling and wailing. And then, the next thought is, oh, Lord, I have a husband. What's he going to think about this? He's used to his wife being this woman. How am I going to show him that this is really who I am? Now I got to really come out of the box, because he knows this woman. This is the woman he knows. But this woman is who God is showing me I have been called to be. And I can't be her in a box. So the interesting thing about that whole experience is it marked me in such a way where a few weeks later, one of my colleagues from my job that I was on disability from, she knew I was hurting, and she knew that I was going through all of this stuff physically, and she was going to this church in my town, World Changers, and so she decided to offer me some VHS tapes. This is how long ago that was. Some VHS tapes of her pastor that might help me help strengthen me. And so I started to watch some of these tapes. And what shook me to my core was some of the things that my today pastor then was saying verbatim was what God had written to me in my notes. And I heard him say it, like, just in you got a VHS playing, and you just doing your thing, you're listening to the video or whatever, and then he said something, and I heard it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the same thing I wrote. That's the same thing God said. And I went to my notes, and I'm like, hold on, where is that? And then he did it again. And then every single time I would hear him. Now I'm trying to listen for it. Where's another tape? Let me get another one. Put it this in. See if he says it again. And it kept happening. And so then I started watching him on TV, and it kept happening. And so my husband, and now I'm watching it on TV, and he's hearing some of these messages, and so he's interested in what this. So we decided to visit. And ever since then, every single time I would go to church, it would be the same thing. Everything that God had written, or I was hearing from this pastor. So over the next I don't know how many years, I actually learned, my pastor taught me how to dig through the Bible even deeper, and how to get real understanding, and how to dissect things, and how to rightly divide it, and how to understand the terminology and the differences in the languages, and how translation impacts the understanding. And there was just so much more to it than just open this Bible and read it, and then you'll be blessed and you go into heaven. So at the same time, though, after I joined that church, my body got even worse. My neck and shoulders were so tight it pulled my spine out of alignment. It caused 2 discs to rupture in my low back and 3 in my neck. I had all kinds of stuff happened. And I ended up being diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And basically, it's a lifelong prognosis of chronic pain. They basically said that you will hurt from for every breath until you take your last one, and which means you're going to be taking anti-anxiety medicines, antidepressants. You're going to be taking muscle relaxers, anti everything. And if it gets too much, if you have a stressful event in your life that causes a flare up where you're literally laying in the bed for 2 weeks because you can't function because you're locked up, then you have to take pain pills, which are addictive, by the way. So I had gotten to a point where they were prescribing 120 pain pills a month. A month. I couldn't even keep up with the prescription. I couldn't even take that many pills. So while all that was happening, God told me that, they told me that, in the year 2000, I turned 30. So all of my 30s was my childbearing years were all just fibromyalgia. And they told me that with all the medicines that I was taking, that there was no way that I would be able to carry a baby, hold a baby, like in my arms because of all of this. I wouldn't be able to hold a baby. And then my body wouldn't be able to sustain the pregnancy. And then with all the medicines, I would never be able to be off of them and function. So adoption, I need to start considering that. That's what they told me. So anyway, in 2011, it took me 11 years, and I finished my book. I wrote my stories. I wrote the stuff that I learned, all the lessons that I learned over that period of time. And the book is called The Self-Love Lessons. 7 lessons every woman must learn about herself and the power of womanhood. And in it, I teach women how to know where you are so you can get where you're going. How to understand God's real love for you, because I didn't know how to love me. I didn't know how to choose healthy friendships, healthy love relationships. I didn't know how to set boundaries in my life. I didn't know how to express myself in a way where I didn't feel ashamed, or didn't feel like I was unworthy of really communicating how someone was hurting me. All that stuff just created more and more wounds and made me stuff even more into a box and isolate myself. And all of that was so unhealthy that my body was like, no, this isn't good for you. We're shutting down. That's basically what happened. So in 2011, 11 years in the 11th month, the 11th anniversary of God speaking to me, I submitted my manuscript to the publisher, and it was done. The next month, God told me to stop taking the anti-anxiety and antidepressant medicine. The month after that, he told me to stop taking the pain medicine. And he kind of weaned me off of it. He just said, start weaning from these things. Stop taking the pain medicine. Stop taking the muscle relaxers. Stop taking all this. Now, I didn't even mention this. When you're in constant pain, it causes your blood pressure to elevate. So I was taking blood pressure medicine too. So he weaned me off of all of this stuff once my book was finished. And that January, I got pregnant. And boy, were we excited. And that's a whole nother story. And it's a powerful one, because back in 2005, he told me that we don't have to have pain when we deliver our babies. And imagine that now. And I didn't think this message was for me, because I couldn't have any babies anyway. So let me just tell somebody else. Well, lo and behold, I'm pregnant. And a few months later, we lost the baby. A few months after that, we got pregnant again, and we had the baby. So I've packaged the entire story in what I call supernaturalchildbirth.com. And if you're interested in hearing that story and going on the journey and learning how you too can have a baby without having any pain, I'll share that with you. Just go there to the website, supernaturalchildbirth.com. Anyway, so I'm sharing my story. I wanted to just kind of share my heart with you and just let you know part of me and part of why I'm here. on these Wisdom Wednesdays. This is just the beginning. There's a lot of nuggets that I couldn't share in just this little bit of time, but I want to start digging into them. I want to start just kind of peeling the onion layers back and dealing with some things. And I'm, like I said in the beginning, I'll be sharing, telling my business, putting it in the streets. This is on YouTube, okay? So everybody knows all of this at this point, and I want to be able to let my life be that light and let you in. Because it's so funny. A few months ago, I felt led to do these videos, and some of you remember they were called Unapologetically Me, and it was a 30-day exercise in vulnerability. I got to maybe day 6. And when I started looking at the videos back, I'm looking at me and I'm thinking, who is that? Oh my gosh, what is this mask I'm seeing you wear? Whoa, who? Oh my, I didn't even realize that I was wearing that mask. I mean, there were other masks that I knew I had to take off, and I thought I was doing that. But it took me to watch those videos to realize, hold on a second, there's still something that's a little off here. We got a little bit more work to do before we can fully feel safe in being completely vulnerable. And that's where we are today. So it took me a minute. But God is a healer. He loves me just like He loves you. And that's the other thing, I don't want you to feel like this is going to be a session to work on you all the time and, work you out and figure your stuff out and all of this. Really, I want to make space for you to be able to look at your life from a different perspective, because sometimes it's all in the way you see things that can determine whether or not you can move through it. And if you don't move through it, that obstacle is going to still be there, and you'll keep bumping up against it until you finally say, you know what is this? This is a mountain in my way. I can move past it, but I got to look at it for what it is first. And sometimes that requires you to stand in the mirror and say, ooh, that's ugly. I got to learn to love it. I can grow through this. Ugh, it's not cute, but it's me, and it's not perfect. But God loves me anyway, and He's not mad at me, and He's not punishing me, and I don't have to worry about His wrath because He poured all that out already. It's done. So I'm glad that you took the time to spend our first Wisdom Wednesdays session together, and I'm looking forward to next week. I know it's going to be an amazing time. We are about to just embark on a journey that's going to be really, 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 really powerful. So thank you so much again for joining me. I can be reached at www.queeniebrown.com. I hope you will decide to socialize with me online. I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/the Queenie Brown, the Queenie Brown. That's me. And then I'm on Twitter at Queenie B. And I have a website, and I want you to go to the website. If you're interested in the book, The Self-Love Lessons, you can find information there about the book. And one of the things that we will be doing, I'll be sharing some lessons, and some of the things that we talk about will come from the book, because God had me write it, and it's interesting. He had me write the book, but He kept telling me that I'm intending for you to teach it. I need you to teach this book so that they learn the lessons and then use your life and your example and your experience to help them see it maybe from a different perspective. So that's what we'll be doing. I respect your time. I thank you for joining me and having lunch with me today. Please, please, please leave a comment. I wasn't able to check comments today. I just kind of wanted to just share my heart with you and let you get to know and come into my world just for a moment. But going forward, we're going to keep this thing interactive, and we're going to make it fun. We're going to make it light, and we're going to, laugh. And some days we go into the depths of the ocean. I'm going to warn you, but I'll let you know when you need your tank. Anyway, I love you, and God loves you. And I'm grateful to have you in my life, and I'm grateful to be on this journey with you. So until next time, I'm Queenie Brown, and I'll see you on Wisdom Wednesdays next Wednesday at noon. Bye-bye.